Welcome to the 23rd episode of Brains Matter. I'm the ordinary guy, and times are changing. I'm not trying to be musical there, but just letting you know that the show will be undergoing some changes as of this episode. In the past, I've had a couple of stories per show, along with some news stories for the week. And aligning to some of the feedback I've been receiving, I'll be changing that to a single main topic per show, so the show becomes a bit tighter, or so I hope. I'll also be changing the frequency of the show to once a fortnight instead of every week. For those overseas who don't know what a fortnight is, it means every 2 weeks. And that's not because I don't enjoy doing the show. It's a lot of fun, and I enjoy hearing from you all. I'm just not able to dedicate the time to it that I used to have. I've been lecturing at a couple of different universities in the evenings, amongst a few other things, and that doesn't include my day job. As you've heard by now, there's also a new theme song to the show. Thanks to Glenn Gertz from Modular Recording, the label for Cut Copy, who I featured on the show a few weeks ago, for the usage of the song Future by Cut Copy as the new theme. When you think about it, science is all about the future and learning from the past, sentiments which are expressed in the song. If you enjoy Cut Copy, or enjoyed them when I featured them last time, you can find a link to their website from the Brains Matter links page, so go get their songs from iTunes or your record store. They say that Dmitry Ivanovich Mendeleev was the youngest of 14 children. 14 might sound like quite a lot, but it was pretty common at the time, and the time was the 7th of February 1834 in Tobolsk, Siberia. If the name Mendeleev sounds familiar, that's probably because you've heard it before, if not in reference to the man, at least to one of his legacies, and that is the periodic table, as many a chemist or physicist would be able to tell you. Mendeleev arranged the 63 known elements from the time into a periodic table based on the mass number, and then published this in The Principles of Chemistry in 1869. The mass number is the average number of protons and neutrons in the nucleus of an element, calculated from the relative abundance of isotopes of the naturally occurring element. For those not chemically inclined, an isotope is a form of an element which may have a different mass number. In other words, it has the same number of protons, or atomic number, but it may have a different number of neutrons, which means that a chemical property of the isotope is the same, simplistically speaking, but the mass number is different. You then take an average based on percentages. For example, carbon has an atomic number of 6, in other words 6 protons, but the mass number varies from 12 to 14, which means it has been found in nature with between 6 and 8 neutrons as well as the 6 protons. The majority of carbon is carbon-12, and the average mass number or atomic mass of carbon is 12.01. Mendeleev realized that all the elements hadn't been discovered by that point, and left spaces in his periodic table for new elements, and predicted the discovery of 3 elements that were yet to be discovered, including boron and silicon. His table didn't include noble gases because they hadn't been discovered by 1869. The elements were placed in the table by atomic number and showed the variances from atomic weight in many instances. Today, the periodic table is pretty much taken for granted, but the next time you have a look at one, just stop and think about the incredible brain power that must have gone behind organising it in such a fashion, without the aid of modern computers and without the aid of current knowledge of chemistry, pretty much working from first principles most of the time. So who was this genius? Dmitry Mendeleev's father, Ivan, was a director of a local gymnasium, and his mother, Maria, was from a family that introduced paper and glass making to Siberia. Unfortunately, Ivan died when Dmitri was very young, and Maria worked to support the large family. Dmitri was schooled in the gymnasium at Tobolsk, and he excelled in mathematics and physics. Maria realized that her son was talented in science and wanted to give him a good education. This was dealt a blow when the glass factory at which she worked was destroyed in a fire, however. Dmitri was 14. The family moved to Moscow in the hope that Dmitri could attend the university there. Like all good plans, it didn't go quite the way of the Mendeleev family, so instead they moved to St. Petersburg, where Dmitri enrolled as a student science teacher and was granted a scholarship in 1850. Tragedy struck at this point, however, and Maria died from tuberculosis. Dmitri carried on his studies, but was struck with a serious illness. His doctors thought that he'd contracted tuberculosis as well, but despite this, he managed to continue his studies by the fact that his fellow students and professors came to visit him at his bedside. With the illness taking the better of him, Dmitri moved to the Crimean Peninsula where he taught at the gymnasium there, and it was there he made a recovery and the doctors could no longer find any trace of tuberculosis in his body. But before he could shout, "It's a miracle!" he finished his Master of Arts degree in 1856 and in 1865 completed a PhD from the University of St. Petersburg. After that, he became a professor of chemistry at the St. Petersburg Technological Institute in 1863 and celebrated this fact by marrying Feoza Vleshcheva, who bore him 2 children, a son and a daughter. However, they divorced in 1882. Dmitri later married an Anna Popova, and together they had 4 children. So back to the periodic table. As we know, he ordered elements in his periodic table by atomic weights, although he wasn't quite clear what to do with hydrogen and left that out, which is why today, when you look at the periodic table, it seems to be tacked on. The spaces he left for elements which were unknown at the time turned out to be absolutely correct. The discovery of gallium, germanium and scandium only confirmed his suspicions, and respect for his scientific ability increased after those discoveries. Mendeleev wasn't popular with the Tsar, and his political views caused him to resign from the university in 1900. He was later appointed as the director for the Bureau of Weights and Measures in 1903, and remained there until he died of pneumonia in 1907. Quite a remarkable man. Today's shout out from the Frapper Map goes to Adrian from Evansville, Indiana in the US. Thanks for signing the Frapper Map on the website, Adrian. I've had a fair bit of feedback since the last episode, but I'm running short of time today, so I'll mention that in the next episode. I hope you enjoyed the show. You can comment on the show on the website at www.brainsmatter.com or send me an email at mail@brainsmatter.com. If you enjoyed the show, you can support it by voting for it in Podcast Alley or leaving a comment in iTunes. Don't forget, you can vote for the show in Podcast Alley every month. And I'll leave you with a quote from Dave Barry. "You can only be young once, but you can always be immature." Goodbye for now.